And we're live. Hello and welcome to another episode of the MMK Show. Today we're going to be talking about an incredible tool that has helped thousands of Amazon e-commerce sellers optimize their listings and make more sales. And that tool is PickFu. We have Justin Chen, who's the co-founder of PickFu, waiting backstage. And he's going to be talking about how PickFu can help us, what are the new features that PickFu has recently added. They're now in new territories, not only in the US, and this is the fun part. We're going to do a live PickFu poll on this webinar and actually see results. So that's going to be pretty cool. Hi, Mark and Kevin. How are you guys doing today?
Really well.
Yeah, excellent, Megla. Thank you.
All set for India, starting in a few weeks?
Yes, started getting my clothes ready last night. I'm starting on it, so I'm organised.
Yeah, it's getting closer. It's getting closer by the day, isn't it? It soon comes around.
Won't take long.
It is. In fact, less than a month now. Today is 16 February, so we started on 13 March. Less than a month. And Feb, of course, is a shorter month.
I know. I think we find out in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think a couple of things that we've been talking about in the group, and a few people have asked us as well, because we do this India trip twice a year, March and October. So Mark, you were saying that, March is a better time to come on the trip if you want to prepare for Q4. So do you want to explain to people why March is a good time to start sourcing for Q4?
Yes, certainly, Megla. And look, I think, if you are going to launch, it's probably a really great time is to be live for Q4. So you can, take advantage of the extra sales that are around. And why we say March is a good time, if you work backwards from when you actually do your order to when it arrives, it's about 6 months in total with your first order, because you've got in India, if you've got handmade products, so metal, wood, those types of things, you've probably got a 10 weeks sort of turnaround on your product. Then because you knew you're going to spend a few weeks doing your design and getting everything right before you place your order, you've got packaging to work out, and then obviously you've got to ship. And if you're going into Q4, you can get into some bigger, I suppose, hold-ups at the port. It's about 3 weeks on the sea. You've got to have a bit of time at the port at each end. So really, to go live for October, March is perfect. If you wait, and I mean, in the October trip, you're really going to either probably get in and launch, because you've got Christmas and things out of that too, by probably it's going to be May or June. So you're even going to miss the start of the summer in the US. I think it is a perfect time. And I mean, I'm a bit impatient. If I'm doing something, I don't want to be hanging around waiting for it to happen. I want to do it now. So I think it's great. And I mean, obviously, if you want to do Christmassy theme stuff, those lots of Christmas decoration type things that we see in India at the fair, it's a perfect time to get in for that as well.
Okay, awesome. And so just to remind everyone, the trip dates are March 13th to the 20th. If you are interested, go to indiasourcingtrip.com to get more information. And we do have a special offer in case you are willing to share a room with another attendee, or maybe you can bring a business partner or a friend, but we can pair you with another attendee as well. We have a special offer for a few rooms. There's a limited number of rooms that we've been able to negotiate with the hotel. So you can get a room sharing option for 3,500 rupees. It's usually, $3,500.
I'll have two. Thank you, Megla. Can I have two Indian rupees?
Yeah, $3,500 instead of $5,000. So that's a saving of $1,500, which is quite significant. And this is one of the advantages of me coming here and living in India, because I can go to the hotel and we can negotiate all of these deals. So if you are willing to share a room with another attendee, then you can use the code IST special when you sign up for the double occupancy option on the website. Okay, and then of course, just real quick before we invite Justin, our Vietnam trip is coming up in April. So the dates are April 18th to the 29th. In case anyone's interested, you can go to vietnamsourcingtrip.com to get more information. And we're going to be going to 3 different cities in this trip. We'll start in Hanoi, then Da Nang, and then Ho Chi Minh City. So we're going to be visiting about 10 factories, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing and information sessions and conference that's going to be done during this trip as well.
Global Sources Fair.
And we're visiting the Global Sources Fair, and we're spending a night on a boat in Halong Bay, in picturesque Halong Bay.
I can't wait for that. That's my
Yes,
biggest
that's going to be awesome.
part. It's awesome. We've done it before, and I'm like dying to do it again.
Cool. All right, so let's get started. I am going to invite Justin Chen from PickFu. Hey, Justin, how are you doing?
Hey, Megla, doing well.
Hi, Justin.
Hey, Justin, good to see you again.
Hey, Margaret. Hey, Kevin.
Long time, long time. So we're super excited to talk about PickFu. And I mean, most people are familiar with PickFu, but there are some new features that you've added. And we also want to see how a live poll is done. That should be interesting. So Justin, first, can you give an introduction of yourself and, what's your background? How did you end up co-founding PickFu?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Justin. I'm one of the co-founders at PickFu. My partner John and I founded PickFu years ago. I mean, over a decade ago, as a side project. Actually, it was we were working on a completely different business, and we were trying to redesign a website. And so, in the process of that, we couldn't agree on like which approach we should go with. So, being engineers, we decided, well, let's build a solution to crowdsource some feedback, and that was our kind of roundabout way of breaking the tie. And so that's where PickFu started. It lived as a side project for many years, and we just kind of put it out there for other entrepreneurs to get feedback on things. And e-commerce kind of found us, and so we started seeing a lot of e-commerce and Amazon sellers using it to test main images and those kinds of things. And so after that started growing, we decided to push a lot more into the Amazon space and really tailoring the product a lot more for it.
Cool. And I remember the first time I heard about PickFu was from Kevin King.
Yes.
So he was doing this presentation at Global Sources Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the title was like 10 secret hacks to boost your sales. And then PickFu was one of the tools that he had mentioned maybe in 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So you've come a long way since then.
I think he was the first one to find it for e-commerce. So he'll definitely get the credit for that.
Yeah. And we've got Steve Chow from My Wife Quit Her Job. He's saying, I love PickFu.
Hey, Steve.
Awesome. All right. So, Justin, you've got a few slides with you. So, yeah, go ahead, share your screen, and let's get started.
Great. So I've got some slides to share. I definitely wanted to start with an overview of PickFu if there's people who aren't familiar with it, but definitely feel free to ask comments or ask questions in the chat wherever you're watching. So the topic of today's talk is maximizing the potential of PickFu in e-commerce. And as you'll see on the title slide, you can use PickFu on almost anything, and it doesn't have to be Amazon or e-com related. I actually used it on the title of this talk and the description. I generated 2 different variations, and I let the crowd decide for me. So that's where I got the title for this talk. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of PickFu. I'll do a demo to kick off a live poll, which we'll check in later in the presentation. I'll show off some use cases, some best practices, and then we'll talk about some of those updates that Megla was referring to and do some Q&A. Great. So what is PickFu? So large CPG companies have access to expensive market research consultants and focus groups. And at PickFu, our mission is to level that playing field through professional grade consumer insight with consumer app ease and pricing. So what does that mean? Basically think of PickFu as a digital focus group that lets you tap into your target audience to get feedback on all aspects of your product, from the concept to the brand and packaging to the listing images and the copy. And every PickFu poll is essentially a single question with 0 or 1 to 8 options that you want to get feedback on. We tap into a panel of respondents that we pay to give feedback. So they choose their preferred option. They give a written explanation why, which is where a lot of the value comes from. And they also give their demographic information so that you can splice and dice their responses based off their attributes. And all of this happens in a matter of minutes and hours, not days and weeks. So it's really game changing how fast you can get this consumer feedback. So at its core, it's a very general purpose tool, kind of like I showed you in the title slide, that you can use in a lot of different ways. But here are some ways that top sellers use PickFu. So when you're working on your product, you can do things like concept validation, do feature and competitive analysis, obviously work on the packaging design, get feedback on pricing, tests out your logos, taglines, branding, all of that kind of stuff. And when you're launching and getting your marketing creatives ready, you can test all aspects of your listing page. So things like your main image, your titles, A+ content, secondary images, even things like Facebook ad pre-testing is something that we see commonly done. So you're probably wondering who answers my polls. I mentioned before that our panel is comprised of people that we pay to answer the survey. So they are incentivized to do good work. They also agree to a non-disclosure agreement, and we're constantly vetting their responses and who's allowed to participate through a combination of machine learning and human curation to ensure that the people who answer your polls are genuinely doing it like with earnest quality. And something that I'll talk about more later, but we're now able to tap into 15 million respondents across 5 different countries. And when you pull that audience of respondents, you're able to slice and dice by dozens of audience targeting traits, ranging from basic demographics like gender and age to behavioral ones like cooking frequency or pet ownership. And we're always adding more of these traits. So if you don't see what you're looking for, definitely reach out to the team and let us know. A lot of these behavioral traits are actually from customer suggestions. And lastly, PickFu is meant to be extremely accessible, and that starts with the price. So prices start at $1 per response. And a new change has been that we dropped the minimum from 50 responses down to 15. So you can get your poll as low as $15 now. And we never require a monthly commitment. So there's no access fee or anything like that. You can pay as you go. So that'll fit in with your product development lifecycle. Maybe you only need to test every few months or once a year, whatever it is. You can always just come in and pay when you need it. So we know that PickFu can help every e-commerce seller, from small sellers looking to optimize their first product listings to the largest aggregators that are relaunching brands with new branding and packaging, kind of like what Thrasio did in one of our case studies that you can find on our website. Basically, what happened is they had a pet deodorizer brand called Angry Orange that they wanted to rebrand. The packaging rebrand was going to be a $50,000 investment, and to validate the direction, they used PickFu to test out different brand and packaging designs. And once they were confident, they did pull the trigger on that rebrand, and it took a $2 million single product and grew it to a $20 million product line based on that new branding. And on a smaller but more relatable scale, we also worked with a brand called Yes Bar, who experimented by just changing their main image. So something really simple. They agreed to change nothing else for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, Yes Bar saw an 11.8% increase in sessions. And with that increased organic traffic, that one change alone accounted for over $3,400 in increased revenue, all from a single $85 PickFu test and from a simple swap of the main image. So I'm going to stop the screen now, and I'm going to hop over to a different screen where we'll do a live poll. Hopefully you see that. So this is the PickFu poll builder. You can, it's free to sign up for PickFu. You could use Google sign in or just, sign in with an email and password. There's going to be a button up here, new poll. You just hit that. And so the first thing that we're going to be able to choose from is what poll type we want to do. In this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate a poll you might do when you're making a product sourcing decision. So a lot of times you might be deciding between different designs or manufacturers, and this is a common test that we see. So in this case, I've got a couple teapot designs that I kind of pulled off some manufacturer websites. So the question I'm going to ask is, if you were shopping on Amazon for an infusion teapot, which product would you buy? And so let me find my images. So I'm going to drag one here, drag one here. Let's see. So those are 2 different infusion pots. I'm actually going to add a little bit of context because since I wasn't able, these aren't my images. And normally if they were my images, I would have made sure to ensure consistency across backgrounds and aspects and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to tell them to focus on the product design, not the image style, something like that, because otherwise they may think I'm testing out the main image, layout or something like that. So like I said, 15 people is the minimum now, but let's go ahead and do 50 people. Here are those countries that I was alluding to earlier. You can also do a targeted audience. So if I wanted to do tea drinkers, I believe we have tea drinkers. I won't do that right now because it does take a little bit longer when you're targeting, and I do want this to be done by the time we're done. What this section is you can actually collect additional demographic information. So this isn't going to restrict the audience that we surface for you, but it's going to ask them additional information so that you can splice and dice the results. So for example, if I wanted to see the education level of each one of the respondents, or their credit score, or any of these other different attributes, let's just pick another one. Well, tea drinking frequency. All right, so this is a preview of the poll, and let's check out. So I already have credit on my account, so I'm just going to kick that off. And all right, so this poll is live. It'll start getting responses immediately, but I'll come back to this in a little bit. So let's see. I will stop sharing.
That is very cool. I really like how fast the responses come in.
Can
so
I pop
literally
this?
within minutes. Yeah.
Can I share this?
Pop the link in. Yeah, you can send me the link in private chat and I'll post it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then people can follow along if they want.
Yeah. There's one question from Yusuf. So he says it's quite late here, so I'm posting my question now. Is there a platform, like he means platform, to do a video poll, like picture polls?
Yes, actually. So one thing I should have mentioned. Yeah, so you can test images, you could test text, you could upload video as well. And so people do test things like, the videos that they might be putting on their Amazon listing page, or as you're building the video, you may want to test different components of it. So some people will test just audio, like voiceovers. So we actually used it when we were making videos to test over different voiceover actors and actresses, trying to match, which one sounds more appealing for like a pet brand or something like that. Or maybe the theme song that what kind of soundtrack you're playing to. So I think it's really important to test the different components of your video as you are building your video, and not just testing the final video, because you've already made so many choices by that point, and people may be reacting to different aspects of it. So yeah, you could definitely test video. So you could either get feedback on just a single video, or you can do like video comparisons, multiple video comparisons.
Right.
It's a good question.
Is 15 people a large enough sample for a test?
It depends on what you're doing. And so if we go back to the poll builder, there's a little tooltip over each different response size. And so we kind of have recommendations for when you might use different sizing. What I tell people is that 15 is great for like a directional gut check. And I personally use 15 a lot when I'm kind of testing things that I kind of want to know, but it doesn't feel worth the 50 investment. So maybe it's like the title to the talk, or maybe like there's some wording I'm trying to work out for, like, a subject line, or it's just kind of like small, and you just want to see from 15 people, am I going to get like a very polarizing result, right? Because if it's 10-5, I'm going to feel pretty comfortable even though it's 15 people. And so what we're trying to build the habit of is gathering feedback on smaller decisions, so that when you get to that final end product, whether it's your product design or your main image, you've used data, a little bit of data along the way, as opposed to just waiting to the very end. Because I think the issue that we see is that a lot of people just wait. They think, oh, I'm going to do a 50, 100, 200 response poll at the end, but I'm using all these assumptions along the way, and I'm not gathering data. And so we'd rather people to gather a little bit of data, 15 response at a time. And then by the time you get to the end, you're actually going to have a much more polished end product. So that's the way I look at it.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so let's continue with the slides.
Yeah, great. Those are great questions. Cool. So use cases, product validation. That's kind of the poll that we're doing in the demo. Product validation is such an important use case to highlight. It's one of the benefits of testing with PickFu is that you can test things that don't exist yet, and so you should take advantage of that and test hypothetical products or even just ideas. You can, in the example that if you can read it, it's testing out a concept and a potential price. So we'll see people say like, if you're a mom and you have kids, like, do you ever have this issue? And would you be interested in a product like this? Right. So just like what you would do at a coffee shop, if you just went into a coffee shop and you started asking around, just think about doing those kinds of idea validation, product validation tests with PickFu. Competitive analysis is really interesting too. So whether this is testing an existing product and how it's doing in the marketplace against your category leaders, or you could also be testing a potential new product that you want to launch. Maybe you're trying to launch a deodorant into this very crowded space and you want to see how you're going to do. So there's a lot of interesting ways that you can use competitive analysis to get feedback. We'll talk a little bit more about this later with a new feature that we have. Logos and branding, of course, is super important. Even for our own PickFu logo, what we did is we designed it with 99 designs and we threw it up on PickFu and we just let the crowd decide on what version to pick. So, typically when you're doing some kind of a logo or branding design, you are going to get a lot of variations from your designer. So it's great to throw it out to your target audience and get them to respond to it. And this is especially important if you're using your brand in a new country or a new culture. You do want to make sure it's not going to be offensive or, who knows, there's a lot of unforeseen implications with launching a brand into a culture you're not aware of. Product packaging. So similar to logos, you want to make sure your packaging appeals to the markets you're selling into. I think this is a mistake a lot of people have as well, is that they think that just because that their branding and packaging are successful in one marketplace, they want to expand to another one, but they don't test if the styling of the packaging or the information that's presented on the packaging is the way that the target culture likes to see things. Product listing images. This is our bread and butter. This is what everyone knows us for. And the case study I mentioned before was the main image test. And this one I think is underutilized. So marketing claims, and there's kind of two parts to it. One thing I recommend people doing is an open-ended poll first and asking what features are important to you when buying an infusion teapot or whatever it is, and actually just getting people to kind of riff open-ended. Then when you think you've decided on what your selling points are going to be, then doing a poll like this one where you actually load in all your selling points and maybe how you're going to market it, and then asking people to rank the selling points. Because a lot of times you can't emphasize, all 8, right? Like you're muddling the message. And so this is going to help prioritize your bullets, even what things you might emphasize in your secondary images. And it just really helps to get into the mind of your potential buyer. Is it really the locally grown that's more important than pesticide free when it comes to buying lettuce? So a couple of best practices that I wanted to emphasize about running these kinds of tests. First of all, question wording is super important. You definitely want to be clear. You want to be direct. You don't want to lead. So, plain language as possible. Be as plainly worded as possible. When you're testing different variations of things, you want to minimize the amount of change. So kind of like the scientific method, you ideally changing one thing at a time. So, if sometimes we see our authors and they're testing a different book cover design and different titles at the same time. Well, ideally you're testing the titles first and then you're testing that winning title on different cover designs, not changing both at the same time. And then kind of like what I was saying about the images that I was uploading, ideally you make them consistent in aspect ratio, image quality. You don't want to test a 3D render versus like an actual photo, that kind of stuff, right? Like try to keep them a level playing field. The third one is audience targeting. So just because we have audience targeting doesn't mean you should go crazy with audience targeting. And I think a mistake a lot of people make is targeting too tightly because they're thinking about their idealized end user of the product. However, we know that the buyer is not always the user, right? And so a lot of times you do need to appeal to a much broader audience, even if it's something for, a dad or something. The dad may not be the one buying it, right? It could be a gift for the dad. And so you do need to make sure that your product does appeal to a lot of, especially your listing needs to appeal to a wider audience. And then, like I said before, when in doubt, ask 15 people. We did unlock this lower number of responses so that people can ask more frequently and build up that habit, so that you don't have those little doubts in the back of your head when you're working on your product. And so the process that we evangelize at PickFu is this idea of iterative improvement and not just waiting until the end to test something. So the first process is understanding how you stack up, and that's doing some kind of like competitive test that I was talking about earlier. Then iterating on your own designs against each other, like version A, version B, version C, and then validating again against the competition to make sure you're actually going to win. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you've come up with like the best main image in comparison of it's just itself. Your main image has to compete against the competition, right? So, you do need to make sure that it's going to win against your category leaders. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to take a look at the poll is still going. It's actually almost done, but I will fly through these so that we can get back to it. So a few new updates. We mentioned before the international expansion. This is something we're super excited about. It's the launch of our international panel. So previously, PickFu was only available to U.S. respondents, and we're proud to say that we're able to make it available in 4 more countries, with more coming hopefully later this year. And I just want to emphasize that as you start to sell into a culture that's not your own, it's even more important to gather insights from different cultures and understand their buying patterns and their preferences. So I've got a couple polls, kind of silly meta polls here, not really testing products, but these are things that might make a difference, right? If I don't know anything about Australia, maybe I need to do some fact finding, and I could do some blog research or whatever, but I could also go straight to the source and ask people. So, really understanding how people prioritize things in different countries is important when you're considering what products to sell in those markets. So Australia, Canada, Great Britain. Here's an example of branding. This was a old computer company from back in the 70s where they actually did have an issue where they couldn't understand why the British branches were refusing to use their motto, Wang cares. And, it was sounding too close to wankers. And so, maybe if they had done some PickFu tests back then, they would have foreseen that that issue. So don't let this be you. Oh, Siri. Okay. And lastly, the German panel, adding the German panel posed an interesting challenge because we wanted to target native German speakers. So another feature that we've launched is this ability to auto-detect the language that you're writing the question in, translating it, and then presenting it to your target audience in their native language, for example, in German. We then present a localized response form in German, collect all the responses in German, and then translate them back into your localized language, which is probably going to be English, but we also do have Chinese as well, and Russian. So this is really exciting because it allows a Chinese seller to be asking a German audience about potential products that they want to sell and not having to know either German at all. So super exciting. Okay, just a couple more combos. Another feature we rolled out recently is this idea of combos. And you saw the normal poll builder in the demo, which is really flexible, but for some people it could be pretty overwhelming. And so combos are kind of a simplified way to run common polls. Basically, we've come up with industry-specific use cases that we've seen our customers run over and over again. So we pre-filled in a lot of those blanks based on best practices. So there's typically a fixed price, so there's no more price variation for example, this Amazon competitor test. We pre-fill the question with a best practice question. We give you a fixed range of options like, it should be 2 to 4 images. And we also give you some targeting included. So in a lot of the e-commerce ones, it includes Amazon Prime targeting. So when you choose a combo, basically you're going to get a simplified poll form where the question's already set. You can change it if you want, but that's typically going to be good enough. Upload the images. It's already got the Amazon Prime targeting. You can pick another trait if you want, like the tea drinkers, and that's it. Like the price is set, and you just start the poll right away. So here are some of the e-commerce combos that we've constructed. Always open to making more combos based off customer requests, but these are some of the more common tests that we see our Amazon sellers running. And like I said, all of these include Amazon Prime subscribers as an included targeting, and then one additional targeting of your choice, all for that fixed price. All right, last update, I promise. So we also built this thing called what we're calling the Amazon Mockup Generator, and it's based off one of the practices that we learned from a lot of our customers who were testing product value propositions against a competition before deciding to go forward with a product. What we saw is a lot of customers building fake mockups of Amazon search results, and then testing like, hey, if we all had 5 stars, we all had 5,000 reviews, would you buy this new teapot? And so after we talked to them, we realized that these weren't actually teapots that they were selling. They were thinking about selling them. And if they couldn't win in this hypothetical marketplace, then they would just move on to the next product idea, because, we all have a million product ideas. Why would we move forward with one that doesn't even win in a hypothetical test? So at this mockup generator, if you go to pickfu.com/tool/mockups, what you can do is you can pop in some ASINs or some keywords, and what we'll do is we'll try to find the best or the top rated ones for, for example, two-pack black silicone tip kitchen tongs. But if you have specific ones, you pop them in and import them. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull in data from Amazon, and it's going to allow you to change any of the information in this fake Amazon search result. So maybe you want to upload a new image. Maybe it is yours and you want to change out the image. Maybe you want to change the title, the rating, or the price. If it's a hypothetical one, just grab any other ASIN and put in your new hypothetical product that you might be selling, and then you can use that as your hypothetical listing. And then one of the things that we saw that was an interesting best practice was unifying the listing, the things that you can't really control as much, for ratings or reviews, maybe even playing with pricing. We'll actually see people test out different pricing to see like, okay, well, if I'm new and there's someone with 5,000 reviews, 5 stars, I'm coming in, maybe I'm going to have like, 5 stars over 5 ratings. But if I come in at a much lower price, am I going to be able to take some of the market? Or what is the price at which I can start chipping away? So it's a really interesting way just to try to understand the hypothetical market demand for your value proposition that you think you can actually go out to market with. So really fun to play with. I've got a whole separate presentation where I dive into this that I can share with anyone that's interested in it. Let's see. I think that was it. Yeah. So once you generate all those, you just click the import button. It sends it over to the poll builder, and you could run whatever question that you might have against that new data. So last slide. I get a lot of questions about testing off Amazon, testing on Amazon. I like to say it's not really an either or. Like, you should do both testing. The beauty of off Amazon testing is that you can test these kinds of hypotheticals that we've been talking about this whole presentation, testing things that don't exist yet, that may never exist yet. For example, if you're testing new product concepts or packaging design or maybe branding, and you want to go in a whole different direction, but you're not going to test that live on your Amazon listing. So it allows you to iterate on drastically different directions. So that's a creative freedom that you're not going to get from testing live. So let's see. The other thing is, of course, that you'll understand why. So even in the case of the competitive testing, you may understand that you're losing because you see your competitors getting all the sales, but you may not understand why. And so having all those written explanations of, people saying like, well, I chose this, your competitor because, the product looks better, looks higher quality, or whatever it is. that why is going to help you actually make a better decision about how to improve your rankings. But of course, nothing beats live sales data. So that's why it's still important to test on Amazon. And so what we recommend is after you've gone through all this iteration, you validated your hypothetical changes in the, against your competitors, then test out the final list. You probably have a couple that were pretty close. And so those, you could feel confident and safe that you're not going to cannibalize too many sales by putting those live as a head-to-head test on Amazon. But just caveat that with it, there are still so many factors that can affect, how you perform on Amazon that are completely out of your control, or, you may not even know what Amazon is doing under the hood. So just keep that in mind. All right. And that is all I had. Sorry, that was a ton of information, but
that was very cool. Yeah.
I'm going to.
We just have a couple of.
Yeah.
Let's just take this one question. So, are the glitches in Australia now fixed?
I think so. Yeah. So when we first launched she's probably referring to when we first launched the panel. There was a lot that changed under the hood to be able to unlock this stuff. So there were some glitches going on with the responses and processing them and all that kind of stuff. But it seems to be running pretty smoothly now. And if you ever have any issues, definitely write into our support team, and we'll get it taken care of.
Okay. And Oksana saying those mock-ups are interesting. Yeah, give it a try, Oksana.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at our poll.
Sure. Yeah. So let's see. I don't know how long it's been, but we're already at 49. So I'm just going to load them here. So we're just missing one more. But I don't know which one you guys thought was going to win, but this is the one that won. Let's see what some of the responses were. Higher quality pot. Shape of the teapot is interesting.
Yeah, it does look different with the square.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a neat design, right? The square is a neat design.
Yeah, no, I think that's really different.
Let's see if.
Yeah, it is an interesting shape of the teapot, isn't it?
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Option A or parts in option A are plastic, which means they're less likely to be dishwasher safe. That's a good point. Metal looks more premium. Yeah, so this is interesting things to keep in mind as you're just trying to decide between different potential manufacturers or different teapot designs that you might be sourcing. So this is a really popular way to get feedback. Obviously, you can still go with the option A, but you should go in knowing what some of the concerns and questions that people might have, and maybe you want to just address those on your listing page.
Yeah, and I mean the comments can be so helpful, right? You can, in fact, get ideas for your listings or keywords to use, or things to highlight in your listings, in your description, in your bullet points, because you're actually getting feedback from people. So I think the comments, apart from the poll and everything, the comments are actually very, very useful.
Yeah. We always say that people come for the votes, but they stay for the comments, right? Because that's where the actual value is. Another fun way to use the comments is actually putting up just an image and saying, maybe it's a teapot, and asking them to describe in their own words, like, how would you describe this product?
Oh.
And you'll be surprised, right? Because you think it's going to be described in a certain way, but who knows? Or what would you search for to try to find this product? That's always an interesting way to do it. The funniest thing is a lot of times is like people will put up a product, and they'll ask, what do you think this is? And a lot of times it's an agency who's trying to convince their client that like no one knows what you're selling. Maybe the packaging is just kind of so horrible, the branding. And so like, what do you think this is? And you'll get the funniest answers, because sometimes it's so not obvious what something is from the packaging.
That is very cool. So clearly, have we got 50 responses now?
You know, that last one is just it's just stuck on that last guy.
Pretty quick, really, isn't it? Like, what would it be? 20 minutes?
Hey guys, they must have gone out for lunch or dinner or something.
Yeah.
We can actually see this one respondent answering. You know, I'm on the live page. If you scroll up to the there. Yeah, one
Yeah.
respondent answering. So that's that one.
Really thinking about it.
So cool.
Were there any more questions?
Let me see. We don't have any questions. Jane said option B, and then she just said thanks. So guys, let us know if you have any questions for Justin. And what was interesting, Justin, we were talking earlier before we started, and you were saying that PickFu is used not only by e-commerce Amazon sellers, but also by gamers and other industries. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so e-commerce is definitely one of our bigger customer segments, but the other one is actually mobile game companies. So we have some of the largest mobile game companies use us to test game characters, game UX, app icons, app store screenshots, kind of like all the same stuff that Amazon sellers are using, are testing, because it's a marketplace, right? And so you're competing in a marketplace where the app icon is kind of like the main image. The app store screenshots are kind of like your secondary images, descriptions, all those things, they need to be optimized. And then, of course, they're testing earlier in the process where, if we were going to have a character that was a Viking, like what Viking design would you want, right? And so before they invest a ton of money into the game development process is so expensive that it helps to get this kind of feedback earlier in the process. So it's very similar to the product design process where, you want to get feedback as early as possible to minimize the risk later down the line.
Right. And of course, we also have a special for anyone who's interested. So if you go to this URL, pickfu.com/ISN, you get 50% off your first poll on PickFu. So you can check that out as well. Okay, collecting data. So it looks like our 50th respondent has finished writing finally.
It's quite interesting looking at those two photos, actually, how the one on the right is more eye-catching because they've got the yellow, like it's brighter. It sort of grabs your attention, I think. That's, it's another sort of element to look at when you're doing your images.
Yes. Yeah, the angle actually makes it feel a lot, there's more depth to it.
Yeah.
Like the other ones are kind of flat. So there's definitely a lot of interesting best practices that we've seen from all the different polls that have come through. But yeah, so going back to some of the best practices that I was talking about earlier, like this is not necessarily an ideal test, right? Because there's a lot of things changing here. Ideally, this would have been an image on white, and maybe the angle of the pots would have been the same. But being as these aren't mine images, I wasn't able to control that. So definitely keep that in mind.
So do most people use PickFu for image testing, for main image testing? Is that the most common poll?
It is the most common poll because of that's kind of the reputation that that people have been talking about PickFu in the context of split testing main images. We've actually been able to skew that a little bit and started getting a lot more people doing product variation testing now. Which is what we do recommend, getting that feedback earlier in the life cycle, because a lot of times what happens is you'll be testing your main images, either variations of your main images or your main image against your competitor, and the comments will come back and it's typically about the product itself, which isn't that helpful when you're just trying to optimize the main image, where they say, well, this product is really not that good, or it doesn't look high quality, or it's like, oh, see, this is where you should have gotten the feedback earlier in the process, so that you could have started with a higher quality product that appealed to more people. And so I think a lot of our customers who are older customers have gone through this process kind of once, because a lot of times people will find us because they're trying to triage like maybe a listing that's not selling too well. So they're trying to fix their main image. They discover like, oh, okay, we should have been doing this earlier. So the next time around on their product, they actually start testing much earlier, which is great, because like it is a better behavior.
Right. Oksana saying the most important thing is asking the right questions.
the right questions. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, the questioning, the question writing is definitely important, and that's why we do try to present some best practices that are pretty plainly worded. Try not to introduce too much bias. Um,
Hmm.
I do try to recommend giving a little bit of context. So, for example, here I said if you were shopping for an infusion teapot, that kind of at least just helps put people in the right mindset.
Hmm.
Which product would you buy, or maybe you want to say like which one would you click on to learn more. So just keeping in mind that any slight change in your question might kind of affect the mindset that people are using to answer the question.
Okay. So looks like a poll is done.
Finally done. Yeah, didn't change the results too much, but yeah, the other neat feature that I kind of alluded to earlier, let's see if this works, is that I do have the Chinese localization on mine. So for a lot of our Chinese customers, being able to use the poll builder in Chinese and then also see the responses translated into Chinese is very helpful to them, especially for those people who are not able to use Google Chrome with the auto translate because they're behind the firewall.
Right. So in the back end, like what is the audience size? How many people does this poll go out to typically? I mean, of course, maybe US, Australia, Canada will be, or Germany will be different, size. But in the US, is it going out to hundreds and thousands of people, or how does the back end work?
Yeah, so now that we've kind of expanded our partners that we work with on the US side, we're able to tap into about 10 million.
Oh,
Obviously,
wow.
it's not 10 million looking at it right then or deciding to do it right then,
Yeah.
but like that is the addressable pool. So if you start to add in more targeting, it may take longer, but like we'll eventually find those people because it might take them a couple of days to come log back on. So 10 million in the US and about 1 million each in the other countries that we launched in.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, it's quite exciting.
Yeah. That's a very quick process, isn't it? That's what amazes me, how quick it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the some of the coolest feedback we hear is when we hear about design teams that will literally just sit down, they'll create a variation, they'll throw it up, go get a coffee or something, come back, look at the results, make a new variation, kick it off again. And so within the same day, you're able to make a lot of iterations.
Decisions.
Yeah. And, instead of the other process, which might have been just asking your friends and family or your coworkers, which are all biased, or
That never
traditional approaches. Yeah. So it's data where you wouldn't have had data before.
Cool.
Yeah. And then that's right. And we have the demographic
Yeah, no, that's great.
breakdowns here. And I think I asked for a couple extra ones. Tea drinking frequency. Okay, so I did ask for tea drinking frequency. So it didn't target by tea drinking frequency, but it did ask them to report it so that you can see how it broke down. So I guess we could interpret this as people who drink several times a week, like that 68 to 31. People who don't drink tea were split.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, even in the age range demographic, you see that 45 to 54 age, they preferred option A, 60% to 40%.
Yeah, that's interesting because if you think that maybe
Yeah.
your target demographic is 45 to 54, that kind of changes what you're thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, like if these numbers aren't, obviously that was only 5 people. So maybe what you want to do is run a separate poll targeting just that age range. If you do think that's an important age range, and just get that age range to respond to the poll. And then that would validate if this is actually this is going to hold across a larger set of people.
So we've got an interesting question here. If you're outside of the US and wanting to poll people in the US, is there a preferred time to post the poll?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's a preferred time because there are always people answering. You will get a faster response, obviously, during kind of US awake time. But we're always kind of pleasantly surprised at how fast it still happens in the middle of the night. So I don't think there's a preferred time. Like if there's not enough people, it'll just take a little bit longer, and you'll see it in the morning.
Right. Yeah, I guess because the pool of people it's going out to, it's so massive. Somebody or the other is online.
Someone can't sleep at night.
Yeah. That is very cool. All right, guys, so we'll start wrapping up here. Let us know if you have any questions for Justin. So I'm gonna, cool. So Mark, what do you think?
No, I think it's great. All the new, features. It's sort of grown legs since, I think we spoke about it, 3 years ago. There's so much more that you can actually do with it. And I mean, some people probably think, oh, that's $100, but if you do 3 products and none of them work and you could have spent $100, it's probably, pretty worth $100.
Well
yeah. We're all wasting more than $100 somewhere else.
Okay, cool. So I don't see any more questions. Guys, let us know if you have any more questions. We are going to be wrapping up. And just another quick reminder, do discount. So if you go to pickfu.com/ISN, there's a 50% discount on your first PickFu poll. So do check that out. And if you're doing a very basic poll, it's generally around $50, right, Justin?
Yeah, generally
without
$50,
targeting.
but without targeting. But we did introduce the 15 response poll. So if you just really want to test it out for the smallest amount of money, it would be $15. With half off, that'd be $7.50. So
good value.
If you just want to see it in action, that's the lowest.
Right. Thank you, Justin. Very informative. Okay, awesome. So let's wrap up here. Anything else that you want to add, Justin, before we sign off?
No, I mean, I hope it was helpful. Definitely check out the website. Feel free to chat with our team. We have a customer success team that is available in the live chat or available to hop onto a customer success call with you. That's all free. And so if you just need help strategizing, I've got this product, I'm trying to figure out how to test it. Like, don't feel stuck when you're looking at the poll builder. Just ask us, and we'll give you some guidance on what kind of question to ask.
Awesome. Mark, Kevin, anything else before we sign off?
No, I think that was pretty good. I think it's a reminder. I think sometimes you forget about things that if you don't have it in your face all the time. So I think it's a good reminder that people you should be using this.
Yeah, I just think it's really good that you can sort of send out to like all these people in the world over sort of thing, and you can get a good response. It's like Justin said before, it's not like you get it off your brother-in-law, your sister-in-law, or everyone in your house.
It's always going to be great.
It's real good information. Yeah, that is very productive to what you're actually trying to achieve. And like Justin said, people started just doing the split testing the images, and there's those other things you can do with it to find out if it's the right fit or with your packaging, etc. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So do most people use PickFu before they launch products or after?
I would say that if you're a newer customer, or newer customers we see use it after, because they come to us when they're trying to fix a problem typically. But our older customers use it much heavier on the beginning part of the process. So testing
they know better.
The concepts, packaging, the design, exactly, like all of that is tested even before generating a main image. And so a lot of data has been collected by the time they get to the launch.
Very cool. Well, okay. Thank you so much, Justin, for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Very informative, very interesting, and especially thanks for doing the live poll. I'm sure people found that very useful. And hope to see you somewhere around the world, maybe in India or Vietnam.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. And before we sign off, just want to inform everyone that we are doing a special webinar tomorrow at the same time about ChatGPT. Everybody's talking about ChatGPT, and we've got Chris Rawlings from Sophie Society who's coming to do a special webinar on how to use ChatGPT for Amazon. So that's going to be very interesting. We're going to announce the webinar later today, so make sure that you are attending that webinar. It's going to be very interesting. All right, so thank you so much, Justin, again, and we'll see you around.
Thanks,
All right.
Justin.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
Justin.
All right,
Lovely
bye.
to see you again.